excited you've tuned into the Sacred Gut Punch podcast, the place of authentic stories, real breakthroughs, and endless possibilities. I'm Dr. Tomi White-Bryan. I'm a coach and consultant in human and organizational performance and the creator of Emotional Intelligence 3.0, a system for achieving extraordinary performance. I'm so excited to have Calvin Klein as our guest. I've known Calvin for about 13 or 14 years, and I have such deep respect, profound love, and just admiration for the way Calvin has carried the task the universe assigned him in this lifetime. I feel like we're kindred spirits. We both were given sort of these out-of-the-box ways of thinking, and we've seen different ways to apply that in the world, and we have been devoted to that, and that can be costly in many ways. But I do love and admire Cal, and I'm so grateful he's here. Calvin, as you know, we jump right in. Tell us about your sacred gut punch.
Oh, Tomi, first of all, I'm just so honored that you invited me to this. I mean, you know that I think you are just an absolute force. So this is just a fun trip. So thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for those kind words.
So the gut punch, I'm not a podcast listener. So what I did is I reviewed some of yours before doing this, and thought about my gut punch and actually realized that there's actually probably 3 gut punches over a period of 50 years that I'd like to share if you're open to it.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one was when I was in 6th grade. And let me frame this a little bit. We lived on a farm, and my father knew me apparently better than I knew myself. And he allowed me to wander because I not only love being outside, I love being deep into nature. And half mile north of our house was a marsh. There was a pond next to that, a hill in between it, a big timber and a river to the north of that. So I occasionally spent literally hours, miles from home by myself. And that was as young as 9 years old.
Wow.
And his only rule was, you be home before the sun sets. Now, that's not a time. That is when the sphere of the sun, the bottom of it, hits the horizon, you better have your butt home. So the first gut punch happened when I was out in my absolutely perfect spot overlooking the marsh and the pond, and a voice speaks to me. And it says, you are going to do something big that is important to the world. And keep in mind here, in 1968, I lived in a world that Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King had been killed that spring. Mr. Kennedy before that, the social disruptions of the Vietnam War. I could not get my head around what big could mean to me as an 11-year-old.
As an 11-year-old, what do you do with that?
Well, I ask questions back. Am I going to be a famous football player?
I think that's appropriate, Cal.
And no. Am I going to run in the Olympics? No. It's not about fame. It's not about winning anything. It was basically just that. And here's the other part that is really incredible to me about this story is that given, I think, the social fear I had about it and that I wasn't going to be this super athlete, supposedly, I put this in my subconscious. I wrote notes to myself at the time. I didn't find them till I was in my 30s.
Wow. But
subconsciously, this is guiding me. And so in my 30s, the notes didn't say other than you were at the pond but I remember the exact spot I was in. So, pardon for the emotion, powerful.
And Cal, I just want to honor, an 11-year-old getting a message of that magnitude.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I know it was subconscious, not only did I remember it, but there were things that happened in those 30 years that were just obviously, I managed it differently. I mean, as a athlete, I was semi-competitive, not aggressively. I was a good football player in high school, but I weighed 155 pounds. I'm not going to do college ball. Okay, right? I sprinted in college, and I had the good fortune to run with world-class sprinters.
Wow.
And I might have made the Olympic tryouts, but as the saying goes, you can't put in what God left out. I got it. That was okay. The big thing was that I did weird things, and I'll give you an example of it, that were like, okay, Callie, someday you're going to be responsible for something, so you might as well have a ton of fun now. So my father and I were business partners in a hog operation. I made a lot of money by the time I was 18. And when I was 19, I built a bar in campus town where I went to college.
Wow.
Okay, so the drinking age was 18. I was 19. Had this bar. Now imagine being on the track team. You have your warm-up run for 2 hours, and you tell the guys, let's stop at the bar and have a drink before we go back to practice. The fun meter was on 10, okay? But there were also things about this that just weren't me, and I knew it at the time that I wasn't going to do this forever. I was a morning kid. Money was made at night. I let other people handle the till. You know how that went. So, end of that. I then go back to the successful vocation of farming. My dad says, Cal, you weren't meant to be a farmer. Go anywhere you want in the world, but you can't go back to the farm. Yeah.
Cal, I love that your dad knew that the farm wasn't for you. There are a lot of parents who want you to live their dreams, not yours.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. He was gifted that way. He knew the nature of things.
I feel that emotion.
Yeah.
What a guidepost he was for you.
Yep. So the interesting thing about that, if I tell people, they say, wasn't that a gut punch? No, it wasn't actually. I trusted the guy. So I went to visit or live with my best friend who was in med school in Salt Lake City. That happened to be my sister. And I soon had a job doing backups for a startup tech company that was basically one of the early builders of the electronic medical record. And I was with them 20 years. And my last job with them was as the senior strategic thinker.
Oh.
And so I was responsible not for the strategies, but for understanding the nature of the business, what the trends were in the world. And here's where my path starts to get in sync. Because I was not a great student, but complexity sciences were starting to be published. And the things that I read were things that I knew in my gut, but I was finding words for them.
Cal, if we have listeners who don't know what complexity sciences are, what would that look like to them?
It would be an integration of various scientific branches. It can include, the original ones would include certainly anything of his biology, ecology, could be well into the neurology. Basically, it's looking at the systems of nature, be it an organism, a person, a community, or the planet, and lifting from it the phenomenon, the characteristics, the principles that make it all work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That was coming into being in the 70s. It was starting to be more prolific in the 80s and 90s. And it gave me a voice, gave me the terminology for things that I just knew internally. I had an innate understanding of. And what was clear to me is that even though our business, I should mention, by the way, that this company, the first year I was with them, was purchased by a Fortune 500 company.
Okay.
So I'm in a very large organization responsible for facilitating the strategic discussions. And even though we were in healthcare, so to speak, I felt we were not doing anything to support the health of the health industry. And it killed me. So I quit. And I started the Nature of Business, which was a business consulting business, which used principles of nature to solve business problems. And for the first time, I think, felt like I, as a person, and the path I were on were starting to get in sync.
Ah, okay.
So I did, that would have been in 2003-ish. And I built a framework that I worked with my clients with that was basically a very simple architecture of intersecting squares representing an organism or an organization and the environment that they operated in, and began to grow the business. Now, there were things about the consulting business that weren't a good fit for me. I don't feel the need to go into that, but Gut Punch, the biggie, came in 2009. And the Gut Punch started with dreams one particular night. And these dreams were very short sequences. They all took the same, and I should say probably ahead of time, these dreams lasted for 10 days.
Calvin, I'm curious. The listeners can't see it, but I did, and I felt it. That raw emotion that came up for you. So this has been 16 years since 2009, and it still has a deep level of impact on you. Yes?
Extremely. Because it's, this is like the footing of the path I'm still on, that I still feel responsible for.
Right.
And yeah, it's like the birth of it.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. You weren't, by the way, at the last refiners, but I hadn't been there for so long that people wanted me to tell the story. I mean, I went boo-hooing. I mean, it was literally, it was terrible. So thank you, though.
Yeah, I love that you are still passionate about it, Calvin. So tell us about the dreams. Tell us about, what is it that's making you passionate?
Well, the dream was these short spurts that were quite simple. It was 2 words that were connected what felt like a toothpick. And jumping ahead a little bit, I didn't understand at the time what they were, but these words felt opposite. But the more you worked with them, thought about them, they were actually complementary. And some of the words that I heard you on other podcasts say, this was a balancing component. These were a tension balancing pair. And in a scientific paper that I'll mention in the future here, the author of that paper said they're bipolar pairs of seemingly opposite characteristics, but with yin-yang qualities.
Gosh, Cal, I love that, right?
Yeah.
I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago in Iceland on organizational performance. And what you're speaking into, I wish I'd had those words, because I talked about polar opposites of engagement and disengagement, and that people think that to nurture engagement, they have to solve disengagement. But actually, there's a hidden dynamic happening underneath it called entanglement that keeps us from being engaged. And and the way you just said that, it was the light, I heard a ping in the universe, and I'm like, that's exactly, Tomi, what entanglement is to engagement and disengagement. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Your model and mine, I'm just going to tell you right now, are the same.
I agree. We just use different language, but we're working toward the same end, aren't we, Cal?
Yeah, we are. So the first night, second night, this happened the second night, and then a third, and, I start to get worried about it. But the toothpicks keep adding up. My wife and I start to worry about my mental health, and this goes on for 10 days. By the way, the first pair I started taking notes probably at about day 3 or night 3. I think the first pair that I wrote down that came to me was indigenous and industrial, just to give you an example. And basically, when the dream stopped, other than worrying about my insanity, there were 3 impressions that were just profound. One was this vision in my head of a pile of toothpicks. No idea what it looked like other than that. The second was, as part of the dream set, that this was extremely important to the world. So, okay, wake up, Cal. And the last one was that I was responsible for it.
Well, so first of all, Cal, you talk about being worried about your mental health.
Yes.
Right? I forgot who said genius is madness, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times in building this model of emotional evolution, this framework called Emotional Intelligence 3.0, I've questioned my own attachment to reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It can be scary.
A short story is very fascinating. One of the more memorable guys that came to our bar was this drunk known as Professor, who just wandered off and talked, but he was incredibly intelligent. And one day the waitress and I are talking to him about this very topic, and he says, the line between genius and sanity is preciously thin.
And you can see right through it.
Yep. Yeah. So I think the part, the sense of responsibility for this that was so troubling to me is now I'm getting some second version gut punch. I'm responsible, and I have this thing, and I have no clue what it is. So I am now on this search that takes years, literally, that, we worried about it. But what evolved from it was, in the beginning, called Spheres of Sustainability, SOS. Eventually evolved into Ecology of Needs. And I'll get into this a bit more. I'd say that the 2 pieces of information of all the studies that I did that were like huge pimples that I was so appreciative of. One was that sustainability was becoming an issue in the world, but it was very confusing. People were greenwashing it, if you remember the term. But the United Nations stepped forward with a definition that was generally accepted, being that sustainability is the meeting of current needs without jeopardizing needs of the future.
Wow.
And needs being the definition of what supports all life. So kind of a rather big thing. The other was that MIT came out with very grand report, the first one that I remember reading like it, that talked about the business of sustainability, and it had two key points. One being that sustainability was going to create a new age, and they meant paradigm, age, era, whatever you define it to be, and that our existing mental models for understanding sustainability or comprehending it, because of its connections, because of its complexity, i.e., complex systems, our mental models couldn't comprehend it. There needed to be new mental model.
I feel like we are in an age of complexity like we've never seen before. The pandemic, so for my model, the pandemic made a lot of emotional tools in our toolkit obsolete. And we have to do something different. So when you talk about it becoming obsolete, is that the vein of what you're talking about? Is that what we're doing is just not working and we have to do something else, yet we're sort of stuck in this space in between. We can't let go of what we used to do. We're not sure what's going to replace it. And so maybe we just keep doing the same old because we're not sure how to move forward.
It's a killer good question with very complex answers, so I'll give the oversimplified version that I tend to rely on. And that is that the age that we have been in was an age of intelligence that relied on rational thinking. And although it's oversimplified, the divided brain has a side that is rational, that is deductive in nature. It breaks things down like science, and is sequential. And the other side is intuitive, which is about connections, bigger perceptive patterns, and that our age has been built on intelligence, science, which some dictionaries define the etymology of as being cindir, meaning to split. And pandemic was exemplary of not only it changed things, but it sort of enhanced our disconnection from the things.
Okay.
Now, from a natural standpoint, well, let's talk about it in terms of our vital organs. Our vital organs all dependent on each other. They're all connected. If you picked one of them, or one of them decides it wants to be the winner, like your heart, and it wants to win every argument, you are toast.
Got it.
Right? So when we start disconnecting, we're getting rid of the natural patterns that life is based on. And why we go back to those tensions that we talked about, the complementary opposites. It's basically the essence of the language of nature. And when we start doing it and dividing and get more divided, it doesn't take much of a biologist to recognize that naturally what that's called is decomposition or rot.
Ah, okay.
And the more you decompose, the faster it goes. And I believe we can be witness to it.
Okay. Well, so Cal, I didn't mean to get us sidetracked. What about, I think you said there were 3 gut punches. Have we gotten up to the third one yet?
Nope. So here comes the last one.
Okay.
So one of the things that my dad told me when I was semi-successful at athletics is don't get too big for your britches. And that has stuck with me. Now I have to start thinking about having been handed a model or a framework that could be a paradigm shifter, and maybe I shouldn't get too big for my britches. And I wrestled with this for years. But here's the third gut punch. 2013, one of my stepdaughters, she and her husband say they're pregnant. halfway through the pregnancy, we understand that there is a genetic disease. The child, a little girl, is named Edyn Ray. Ray being my middle name.
Aw.
And the genetic disease is trisomy 13, which prevents the brain from dividing.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
And there's a funny part to this, so I'll get to in a bit. She passed away pretty close to maturity. She's fully formed, but she died in the womb.
Calvin, I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. So, what's odd about this? It was like my brain went dead for a while. But I was most sad about Edyn Ray when I was at work. It was very interesting. So I had been wrestling with the notion of EON, as I'm calling it now, ecology of needs, as a framework that could potentially change a paradigm. I'm having trouble stepping up to it because of the magnitude. But I have good friends that are honest. And it was probably a year and a half, maybe even 2 years after Edyn Ray's death, that a friend of ours, I don't know if I should mention or not, but the woman named Lisa, who happens to know very well a Dan,
Yes.
literally smacks me upside the head.
Good for her.
I mean, I'm talking, she's a gentle soul, but she
Yes.
did this. And she basically said, how many signals, Cal, do you need? A granddaughter? We're not going to survive. Our minds are divided for a reason. We don't survive if they don't. And we have to use both sides. Divides aren't going to do it. It's going to kill us. Wake up and get to it.
Good for her. I love that she did that. And you know what's haunting me, Cal, is the innocent things parents say that we carry with us, right? How can I hold this model that is game changing for the world that I am steward of, which requires me to be big in the world,
Yeah.
and don't get too big for my britches?
I'm going to take ownership of that one too, because I think it comes down to all the gut punches, which is a recognition. I think of us as a seed. And you know, the framework that I'm talking about, Ian, is basically a circle with an equator. And I think of it as that equator. Below it are those signals, the language that is about well-being that you talk about. But when I was coaching organizations, we often talked about transformation. And I requested that they contemplate transformation being not somebody different or an organization is different, but a higher form of who they already are. And so the top one is about stages of becoming, the potential that we have to be. It's like what the seed knows we can be, but we haven't yet summoned it. And well-being is the stabilizer, and the challenge is the actualizer. And getting stuck in a thought of not get too big for your britches is to ignore the signals of the world. That's why the slap upside the head was important. Like, you know, get a grip. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's my thought about it.
Yeah. So, Cal, I love this language of, you know, well-being is was it the equalizer?
The stabilizer.
The stabilizer. Yes.
Yes. And the other side, the actualizer. And Yeah.
So this juxtaposition of stabilizer versus actualizer, and these gut punches that we talk about on this podcast are those actualizers.
Yes.
What a powerful what wonderful word you have given me framework to think about what these gut punches do for us.
So what happened after this gut punch was also a little otherworldly in that scientific papers just started showing up on my Google searches.
Of course they did.
And what Eon, I believe, comes to represent is that, and what the scientific papers show is that there are multiple branches of science, code biology, some of the psychology, particle physics, genetic algebra, blah, 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 point to the fact that the forces of nature that rule the stars are basically the same structure, and it's a linguistical structure, as the algebra of the code biology in our DNA.
Wow.
And so now I'm starting to realize that the potential is that science may in fact validate this.
Wow.
And that's why the book, I didn't mention the book, but as I thought about how to make this happen in the world, I recognized that I may not be able to. And part of the messages in the dreams were that you are like helping create the seed, but the rest of the world's going to plant it and have things grow. That's not your thing. So I thought, well, the book might be the best way to do it, and thankful, to have it done, even though most people don't like it.
Cal, what's the name of the book in case our listeners want to pick up a copy?
The Arrival of Edyn Ray is the title, but the subtitle is "And Her Gift of Eon, Ecology of Needs, and the Path of Hope It Provides." But The Arrival of Edyn Ray, Eden's, the big thing is EDYN.
Okay.
So that it can be found, yeah.
So, Cal, I can feel the poignancy and the emotional power or impact of this whole process on you, because it started when you were 11. If we have listeners who are experiencing something similar, what do you offer them? What advice do you have for them to and Cal, we've learned to stand in the refiner's fire from some friends of ours, right? This group we belong to, right? And I was talking to Dan Holden last week. He was a podcast guest, and he said, "Stay, don't stray, and pray." I wonder if you have something similar to that you can leave our listeners with.
I don't have anything as tight as Dan did, but what I would say is you've mentioned sometimes resilience. Mm-hmm. And I'd use some metaphor that, again, the language of nature is a combination of tensions. And so I'd have people think about resilience being a stabilizer. But there is this challenge of actualization, let's call it resistance. And you can think of resistance training, that in order for it to summon an untapped potential, you need to take on a task bigger than you have experienced before. So I would focus on the other side of this and realize what you need to take on. And the fact is that the resilient stabilizer well-being part of you is always there and at full capacity to deal with it. What it gives you the signals of is when you better be careful and not take on too much. It tells you if you're lifting weights, for instance, your posture isn't right. It tells you if a tendon is going to snap, if you're going to tear a muscle. Everything, all those resilience, and once you elevate in that new potential, it recalibrates and now it can be resilient there. So I think the goal is to stay focused on that what's driving that new potential, that new self, but deep listening to what that resilience is telling you to be careful of and when you're in danger.
I love that. I love that. What a beautiful description of how to stand in the fire. And I love this, we have a common friend, Dan Holden, and he always reads us this poem about being defeated by ever larger things, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what I hear you saying, right? That the only way we tap into our potential to become all that we come here to be is to be defeated by those ever larger things.
Yep. And I think the thing that, can I do a minor sales pitch?
Go right ahead.
It was nice of you to mention the book, but people describe it as dense, and it is. If people just go to Ecology of Needs, this website, they can get an image of the architecture that is here. And what I think is important about it is that it exists in the world. I've put it into business. There's large consulting companies that use it as an assessment tool. I know this language exists. And the fact is, it reshapes our thinking about, it's basically a linguistical, natural lens of the mother tongue that can help us navigate this complex world we're in and reunite around a sense that we all relate to. This is an innate sense that we share. We have it in common. It's a time for uniting and, returning to that, the nature of us all, I believe.
I love that, Cal. And to summarize, the book is available on Amazon.
It is.
Okay. And then you said the Ecology of Needs. Is that a website?
It's the name of the tool, the framework. It's what the toothpicks turned into. Okay. ecologyofneeds.com.
Okay. So they can find you there if they have other questions or are interested in.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Cal, what a privilege to spend this time with you and hear about these 3 sacred gut punches that were actualizers for you and brought you to this moment. And, I'm like you, I get that my emotional evolution framework was mine to put in the world, but I probably likely won't see its greatest flourishing. It will happen after I'm gone. And to be that mad genius who stands in the middle of that and know that, yeah, that's a challenge.
Well, I will be gone too before this takes hold. So I would like to propose that we have some cocktails and watch it unfold up there.
I'm with you. I'll see you up there.
All right, I'm there.
Hopefully not for a long time because I want to watch my grandchildren grow up. And here we are. So Cal, with deep respect, admiration, and love for you, thank you for being a guest.
Oh, Tomi, thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Sacred Gut Punch. I'd like to thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible, the EI 3.0 companies of Bryan Insights and the Center for Emotional Well-Being, and of course, always to my husband, attorney Jim Bryan. Thank you for your endless support and love. I love you to the moon and back, Jimmy. If you're finding inspiration in the stories, please like and subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends and family who can benefit from these stories of resilience and rising. And if you're experiencing a sacred gut punch, remember, while you may feel alone, you are not. Help is out there. If you or someone you know is in crisis and considering suicide or self-harm, please seek support. Call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988, or chat at 988lifeline.org. And if you're not in the United States, Befrienders worldwide at befrienders.org can help you. Until next time, dear ones, may you use the difficulty as you rise with grace.